Hello, my name is Alex Antonev, and today I'll be presenting about a memoir that I read. It's called The Blackout, Remembering the Things I Drank to Forget, by Sarah Hepola. So the book goes in chronological order of what Sarah's life was and how she got to the position she is today. While she describes a lot of her problems, she goes in depth about her childhood and where everything started. So at the beginning of the book, it starts with a little story of Sarah in Paris, and it kind of just gives us a description of who she really is and like what kind of lifestyle she lives. And going on from that, chapter one begins with her childhood story. Basically, the background is she tried beer when she was 6 years old, and when she had sleepovers with her friends, she was always enforcing drinking at sleepovers because she had a vision of drinking as something cool adults do and just very tough for women to do. So in her next chapter, we get into her early teens and a few years before she becomes a teenager. So she talks about how she was always alone at home, how her parents were always doing something. Her mom was busy and wouldn't spend a lot of time with her. Her brother was at football practice and always had after school activities as he was a lot older than she was. And that's where a little bit of the problem from my perspective, where I think it kind of started. So she got drunk for the first time in sixth grade, which, if you ask anyone, I'm pretty sure they'll tell you that is a very young age to start drinking. Her mom was always busy with something, like I said, and she talks about her first experience of getting busted with alcohol. That happened when she was 16 years old, and not much punishment went on after that. Her parents were very supportive. They didn't like that she was drinking, but they were against grounding her, so there weren't many consequences to her actions. And I think that was also part of the problem because she didn't stop drinking after that. And she also ended up having a boyfriend in high school who she liked a lot, but at some point when she was in her quote unquote party stage, she would go and sleep with other guys, and I think that was kind of a point in her life that she regrets a lot. Something else that I wanted to mention was when her first time drinking, she threw up 7 times and swore to never drink again. But as she claims, it was the blueprint of her starting to become an alcoholic. Moving on from her teenage years, she went to college and she went to the University of Texas at Austin, where like she lived a college experience, you can say, where she partied a lot. She just had like, for her to her at the time, it was a great experience. But more importantly, she talks a lot more about was her experience at work after college. So after college, she got a gig at Austin Chronicle, which is a newspaper company, at the age of 23, and always she always liked writing, and in college and at work she finally realized that, not finally, but she realized that drinking helped her write. So there'd be times where a lot of her work was made when drunk, or maybe like 90% of it. There was a point in time where one of her good friends, Anna, basically didn't make her quit drinking, but Sarah decided to quit drinking after this moment for 18 months because of what Anna told her. She basically said she's drinking her life away and Anna can't be the person she comes and rambles to about all her problems when the problem is her drinking. At 29 years old, she sees no meaning in her life and just pointless. She sees her friends are moving on to bigger and better things, getting married, and she's over here with their boyfriend, Lindsay, who they just go out to bars every single day and just not a great productive couple. And they got to a point where Lindsay, her boyfriend at the time, didn't even find it cute anymore of how drunk Sarah was getting. She'd be crawling like a cat up the stairs, and it was so ridiculous that he was over it. And eventually he broke up with her, and he had a cat at the time. And Sarah really fell in love with the cat, who she ended up calling Bubba, and wanted to start a new journey. So she packed up all her stuff and decided to take her life to New York, where she moved. When Sarah moved to New York, she ended up getting a job and basically doing the same thing. And she got an opportunity to go to Paris for work, and she instantly took that. um, she traveled over to Paris, stayed at a hotel, and lived up her life in Paris basically. Uh, she she went out to bars every day, drank as much as she could, not remembering anything. And um, it was time for her to leave Paris, she realized she had lost her purse. Sarah had like a habit of every night, or not every night, a lot of her nights she ended up having intercourse with guys, and that she could like barely remember any of it. So she left her purse in one of the guys she slept with in Paris, and she left it at one of their hotel rooms. But when she was leaving to go back home, she realized she doesn't have her purse, and she can't remember where she put it because she was so drunk. She was blackout drunk. And so she ends up going to the main office, or the registry where you sign up to get your keys and stuff in the hotel room. And she meets this really nice gentleman who helps her out. And they finally end up finding a person that she kind of recognized. And she ends up going to that hotel room, finding her purse. But from my perspective, she kind of, while she was trying to find her purse, she was being very touchy to this gentleman at the registration office. And I think he like saw that she was kind of flirting with him, and he ended up going upstairs with her, and this is where she and him kissed. And she wasn't attracted to this guy. She was completely sober, and at the time she only had sex with people when she was drunk, or with guys. And her quote is, "I like being held. I like not being alone anymore." And I think it just shows how much of her past when she was little, how she did not like being alone, and how drinking was kind of a relief for her, where she felt happy, and it was just kind of a distraction from her loneliness. And with that guy coming up there, making the first move and helping her out, she felt like she kind of owed him something, but also she enjoyed his presence because she just didn't like being alone anymore. Moving on from her Paris trip, she ended up finding her purse, kissed the dude, and left, and completely at the same, she kind of regretted it, but also she it kind of made her happy as well. But when she ends up going home, back to New York, she tried teaching herself how to cook. And this was her way of like, oh yeah, I'm gonna become more smarter with my money. Um, but she ended up drinking while she would cook and get distracted, call her friends, and end up not making her meal. And um, a few days after, she almost burnt down her apartment and the whole unit and the whole building. She fell asleep while after a day of drinking with her friend. She was making pasta on the stove and completely passed out. And her neighbor, the landlord, came in and um, basically was really upset with her, and she was in disbelief. Later on, uh, we realize, and Sarah tells us that she's 10K, $10,000 in the hold to credit card companies, and she also has some IRS. She's in debt to the IRS, $40,000, and so just one problem after the other, they just keep piling up. And long story short, she ends up getting kicked out of her apartment, and now she has to find a new place to live. From everything that happened in like the last few weeks, after the last stretch was her getting kicked out of the apartment and almost burning the whole place down. So that was her sign of, yeah, I'm gonna stop drinking and get a therapist. Finally, when Sarah decides to actually go sober forever, basically, um, the start of it was not pretty. She hated sobriety. She would go to these AA meetings, which stands for Anonymous Alcoholics, where they talk about their issues, basically a step of going sober, and it's supposed to help. But she hated going to those. She felt old and ordinary just because she was a little younger than, not a little, she was a lot younger than most of the people in those groups. Um, she started gravitating towards books and articles and started reading them of who drank too much, and basically kind of wrote memoirs like she did with this book. Her days seemed to be very repetitive and the same, as she wasn't drinking. Like um she didn't have that same experience. She just didn't really know what to do with her life. And with that, since she was also a big smoker, which I didn't mention, but she did like to smoke cigarettes, especially when she was drunk. And just because she quit drinking, that reduced the cravings of her wanting cigarettes. So she also quit cigarettes. And then there were some meetings in her neighborhood that she started going to just to get more involved. And with the AA meetings, she finally found a guy, or not finally, but she finds a guy that she really likes and is very honest and genuine. And she finds out in one of the meetings that he's gay. And this was when she just loses hope of ever finding a guy that she's gonna love and someone she's interested in. And eventually, moving forward, her best friend Anna has a baby, and Sarah writes her a text to congratulate her, but she doesn't end up responding. And this is where Sarah freaks out, and she just thinks her life is falling apart. So her first stages of sobriety weren't the best. Sarah's next stage in life is, or her next chapter is where she moves back to Texas for a part-time job her boss offered her. And um, this is kind of like she's very excited to go back home. As much as she wanted that New York experience, I think it taught her a lot of what she really likes and wants, and her going sober just made her not want to be in New York alone. So, being a year sober, she doesn't know anything besides going to a bar. Like whenever she was at Texas, she was constantly drunk every day, every other day, and it's just a different story now that she's going back to Texas and she's gonna be seeing all these people, her old coworkers, and it's just gonna be completely different because she's not gonna be living the same lifestyle she did before. And so she goes back home, moves back, and she goes on a dinner date with one of her best friends from high school. and she meets up with that friend, and that friend gives her an embarrassing story of when she was drunk, and this completely made Sarah realize of how her being blackout drunk was even her now that she's sober, she just hates looking back at the stories of how she was blackout drunk and doing all these stupid things because she wasn't proud of these moments. After Sarah moved back to Texas, she realized that she was really overweight and that she wanted to change things. So, 4 months after moving to Dallas, Sarah went on a diet, and in less than 6 months, she lost 50 pounds. And after Sarah lost over 50 pounds in under 6 months, she was receiving a lot of compliments for people. And this is where she said this quote in the book of page 148. After I quit drinking, I saw the world differently. But after I lost weight, the world saw me differently. I think this is a pretty important big quote from her. Um, just because, yeah, she's quit drinking, but she sees the world in a completely different way just because she's doing different things, experiencing other things. Like she remembers all her nights. She's not going and getting blackout drunk and then sleeping with a random dude that she'll never see again. And her losing weight just is something like you can't look at a person and say, oh, they're an alcoholic, oh, they're done drinking. But her losing that weight, I think, gave her a little bit of confidence that she kind of liked, but also at the same time she didn't, just because she didn't like her being overweight was a little bit of an insecurity, I believe. And yeah, so I think this was a big quote from her. Further on, Sarah in chapter 11 talks about all the people that she had inspired her and all the books she's read. And this was just a chapter where she kind of looks back at things and kind of reevaluates. 3 years sober. After being 3 years sober, she finally learned and decided to pick up a guitar, which she promised herself, and that was a big goal of hers to do. And now that she has so much time, or not so much time, but now that she's more free, isn't drinking every day and spending money on all this alcohol, she has enough money to purchase a guitar and start learning it. And something else that she mentions is that sobriety helped her knock out a few false prophets, and that was alcohol, um, other people's approval, and idealized romantic value. So she basically learned alcohol. She doesn't need it. She can stay sober and have a good time, and she doesn't need other people's approval to do things. She has a mind of her own. She like for the longest time she had a problem of not saying no, but I think she finally realized that she can be independent and she doesn't need other people to boss her around, or she can have a mind of her own. And idealized romantic love. Um, she went on so many dates that she just realized like she can get, I guess, in a sort of like get guys can um say things to her that they just because they want to sleep with her. And I just think she just tried out so many guys that she just realized that it's going to be very hard to find the right one. So after all this, her question was, what should I worship now? And this is where she really starts talking about religion and um, worshiping God. In her last chapter, uh, Sarah talks about her cat dying. Like I mentioned before, she basically stole her ex-boyfriend's cat and moved to New York with him, with the cat, called him Bubba. And he's just been throughout her whole journey. He's always been with her. She always liked to cuddle with them. And eventually the cat ended up having cancer, and yeah, so the cat ended up dying. And after this happened, Sarah hasn't experienced any grief from what I've read in the book. She doesn't talk about anyone dying. So this is kind of like the first sense of grief that she faces. And after her cat dying, she didn't think about drinking after the cat dying. She just knew alcohol was not a cure for pain. It was merely a postponement. So yeah, she didn't look to drink away her problems, and it wouldn't cure anything. And after her, she just realized that after she cut out alcohol, her life got a lot better. She started doing new things, um, things that she liked, has a lot more open time. Towards the end of the chapter, at the end of the book, in chapter 12, Sarah ends up going to Paris again. While completely sober, she stays at the same hotel room she stayed at the first time she ended up going to Paris when she was younger. And she tries looking for the same guy that helped her find her purse. She doesn't end up finding him, but she gets to relive that moment and just kind of take it all in and just realize that like how much better she feels about herself being there sober, and just how she doesn't need to be drunk and take alcohol or induce alcohol every single day. At the end of the book, Sarah meets with a lady that emails her about her issues, similar issues that Sarah faced because she read something online and some of her stories, and that really caught the girl's attention. And she set up a meeting with Sarah just to talk about her issues. And the girl Sarah's meeting with basically goes, "Are you how like I can't even see you going through all these experiences." And Sarah basically tells her that she can't see her going through those experiences either, but it's what she's taken away from that. And she basically says, "I was in the exact same place as you are right now." Sarah says this, and I was lost for a very long time. And you just need to believe in it and just take this as like motivation to fix yourself. And who knows if the lady she tried helping fix herself, but it helped doing this, helping out other people, helped Sarah uh, from her own sorrow and just from her experiences of blacking out and getting really drunk. So connecting this all together, I think something that we learned in class was in Frank's book was the quest narrative, and I think this relates to Sarah Hippola's story very well. Hippola's narrative begins with her realization of her problematic relationship with alcohol. She acknowledges the negative consequences it had on her life, including blackouts and damaged relationships. This realization serves as the call to adventure, prompting her to embark on a quest for understanding and healing. As Hippola delves into her past and confronts her alcoholism, she encounters numerous challenges and obstacles. She grapples with feelings of shame, guilt, and self destructive behavior. Her journey involves navigating the complexities of addiction, including denial, relapse, and the struggle to maintain sobriety. Throughout her memoir, Apollo encounters mentors, allies, and sources of support that aid her in her quest for recovery. These may include friends, family members, therapists, and fellow recovering alcoholics who offer guidance, empathy, and encouragement along the way. Hippola's ultimate boon in her quest narrative is achieving sobriety and reclaiming her life through self reflection, therapy, and the support of others. She begins to understand the root causes of her alcoholism and finds the strength to confront her demons. Sobriety became her source of empowerment and liberation, allowing her to rebuild her identity and pursue a healthier, more fulfilling life. Hippola's quest narrative concludes with her transformation and return to society as a sober individual. She emerges from her journey with newfound wisdom, resilience, and self awareness. While her quest for sobriety is ongoing and requires ongoing effort and commitment, she has undergone a profound transformation that has fundamentally changed her perspective on life.